Joining us is Darren Jones, Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Good morning, Darren. Will you welcome a fall in national insurance?
Yes, we welcome taxes going down on working people because, on average, families are paying £4,000 more a year in tax than they did before the Conservatives came to office. So whilst a couple of £100 off a year is welcome, people are still worse off by the tune of over £3,500 on average. And yet, even though the Chancellor's taking more money from us than ever before, people at home will be asking, well, what am I getting for that money when I know that my public services are on their knees?
Darren, you've got somebody standing behind you with banners all over the place, but we'll crack on. I just made the... I know, just move him out of the way. Darren, I made the point that it's almost as if suddenly there's this money and there's sort of confusion or, you know, who do we give it to? Rachel Reeves was very interesting. Shadow Chancellor, she's promised to prioritise tax cuts for workers. Again, not being disrespectful, easy from the cheap seats. If you were in that position with Rachel Reeves today, my friend, James Murray wouldn't answer this the other day. What would you do, Darren Jones, with that £25 billion?
Well, £25 billion is a lot of money. And there are lots of different things that we would do in line with our plans to get the economy growing, because that's the route out of this kind of Tory doom spiral of high tax, low growth, high debt, poor public services. We need to get workers getting the job opportunities they need to earn more money so that they feel better off at home, but then pay a bit more in tax to the Treasury. We need to help businesses to grow and make more profits. But that's not just about money, it's about regulation. That's one of the other big things we do here in Westminster. There are lots of things like planning reform, how you improve access to electricity, how you do skills policy that businesses tell us week in, week out in the Labour Party they're crying out for from this government, but they've not seen.
And Darren, earlier on this week, the Prime Minister warned that Keir Starmer would be as dangerous as Liz Truss with the economy.
That's quite a comment, even of my standards. That's quite interesting.
Can I get your reaction to that?
Oh, I mean, it's nonsense, isn't it? I mean, Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and I have all been very, very clear. We will not announce any policy that is not fully costed and fully funded. We will not be reckless with the economy in the way that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng were, and after 13 years of Conservative failure, because people at home will know their higher mortgage payments, their higher rent, their poor public services, the higher tax they're paying, largely just to pay off interest on a huge national debt, comes as a consequence of the recklessness of the Conservative Party. We in the Labour Party will never, never let that happen, because our fiscal rules, our economic credibility and responsibility is the heart of our agenda for government, so that we can get the economy growing.
Darren, this is what I've been saying all week, and I want to make this point. And everybody goes, oh, he's off again. I was brought up, you know, the Tory party was low taxation, fiscal responsibility. With the greatest respect to you, the view of the Labour Party has been, we'll give everybody 30%, we'll print money, it doesn't matter. What was really interesting from our point of view, Nick and I talked about this yesterday on the show, there was a poll. There's an 11% lead for your party right now in the polls in terms of what the British people believe to be fiscal responsibility. That is a seismic shift of feeling, is it not, Darren Jones? And one that if you do get elected, you're going to have to take very, very seriously.
Absolutely, but our fiscal responsibility, our responsible approach to the economy and to the use of taxpayers' money is at the very heart of our approach to the next election. We've worked really, really hard to change the Labour Party under Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. We worked really, really hard to win back the trust of people across the country. And when we get to the next election, which we would rather happen sooner rather than later, we will set out our plans which will be underpinned by those fiscal rules, by that proper use of taxpayers' money, so that once again we can turn the country around, get the economy growing and make people feel better off at home with the pound in their pockets.
And Darren, if you were to come into power, it will likely be in November next year. We'll be facing no doubt will be another brutally cold winter. Would there be anything that you would bring in immediately to help people with fuel and energy costs?
Well, who knows what the world will look like next November? I'll have to comment on that, hypothetical question nearer the time if we do win the election and if we are in government and if there are problems of the nature that you described. But we do recognise that energy prices has been a huge problem for people in the last few years, and it's a big risk because as a country we're exposed to international price shocks because of the lack of action taken by the Conservatives to make us more resilient in this country. So we've announced a couple of things. One, we're going to help people insulate their homes because, you know, if your home is more insulated, you need less gas to keep it warm, and that will reduce energy bills. But also we're going to be investing in homegrown energy with GB Energy here in the UK, which means that we have more secure, more reliable, lower cost sources of energy grown here in the UK, as opposed to being reliant on fluctuating prices from imports overseas. That will make a huge difference to the resilience of our economy, but also lower people's bills in the long run.
Darren, thank you for joining us this morning. And before you leave, you better pay that man that's been standing there with two flags, slagging off the Tories. Listen, thank you so much indeed, my friend. Really appreciate it. Let's get back to Peter and Emma. Interesting